Good day, everyone, and welcome to Different Stages Radio. I'm your host, JJ, broadcasting in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And my guest today, you know him as one of prog rock, prog metal's premier drummers, also as a founding member of Warlord and a longtime member of Fate's Warning, whose current band, A2Z, is about to release their sophomore album, A2Z2, on June the 6th on Metal Blade Records. Please welcome my guest, Mark Zonder. How are you?
Very good. And you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us
Awesome.
today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for taking the time.
And I appreciate you making the time. I'm very
Yeah.
excited about this record, and I'm very pleased that I had a chance to hook up with you to talk about the new A2Z. It is just brilliant. Love the feel, love the dynamics, love how quite organic it's how organic it sounds, especially your drums. Your drums just sound phenomenal. Can do
Oh,
do you mind talking a bit about the record thus far and how
oh
the
no, absolutely. I think you about sized it up. I think we're done. Okay.
we're
Thanks
done?
for the.
Okay, no problem. See you later.
It's funny though because you hit on so many, like, if I was a company trying to sell something and I had to put sales points out of like what my product was, you hit like most of them. Um, the drum thing. It's funny you say that because I'm sitting in my recording studio now. The drum room is behind me. Um, it's a very dead room. The drums are very small, 20-inch kick, 10-inch rack, 14-inch floor. It's a four-piece kit, period. That's what it is. All DW top of the line, so it's great sounding drums. You take great sounding drums. My microphones are all Lauten Audio, Lauten. Just great, phenomenal microphones. Over the years, I've been lucky enough to put together a recording studio. I have an analog console here, but I use all the over here, like all the Neve, Calrac, Manley, Summit Audio preamps, which create that warm analog sound. I basically have what any, $1,000 a day top of the line studio would have in LA for drums. Now, I don't have the rest of everything to mix and the massive automated console, but for drums, I got it. But more importantly, I have a great engineer that I work with here for years that comes over and we just tweak the drums and we don't change them much. We just get them, dialed in. And it's a very, like you said, organic, simple approach. There's not 75 cymbals. There's not 42 tom-toms that they got to, that Simone, when he mixes, got to deal with. It's a rack and a floor, which is kind of funny if you see the latest DT tour on what that drum set looks like compared to what this looks like. Um, but there's just a lot of time and energy taken to get that sound. There's no triggers, there's no samples, there's no cutting to the grid. I'm lucky enough to have it here in my house, so it's not like, okay, Mark, 20 more minutes and you're done. So, but thank you very much for that. That's something I take a lot of pride in, that it's just over the years, I've spent a lot of time dialing in because I always thought, I think 99% of music fans will tell you, if your drums sound like crap, your album sounds like it. If your snare sounds like crap, your album sounds like crap. So we spend a lot of time doing that kind of thing. I think I've kind of got it dialed in pretty much. I'll never forget when I had the engineer out here one time. I said, "Hey, man, what do you think? I'm looking, I'm itching to spend some money." I go, "What should I get?" And he goes, "How about a vacation?" And he goes, "You don't need anything. You got nothing that you don't have is going to get you a better sound. It might be more expensive. It might have more dials on it. Your sound is your sound." The other thing that makes it very organic, my drums don't have tape on them. They don't have the muffle rings. They don't have this on them, that. It's Remo Ambassador, coated Ambassador top, clear bottom, thin one ply head. The idea is to get the tone of the drum, okay? Not to muffle the crap out of it. My kick drum has no pillow in it, and all it has is a felt strip about this long that just hangs on the inside batter just to kind of deaden the resonance so it's not too boomy. Everything else is just about the playing. Um, I spend a lot of time when I'm coming up with my parts going, okay, what's this going to sound like in a stereo set of speakers? You know, as compared to like, oh, I'm beating the crap out of the China over here, and oh, a crash, 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 crash. What's it going to sound like? So I really appreciate that. I'm glad you got that one. I've heard it from a lot of people where they think this sounds like an analog old school album.
Well, it's ridiculous, and it's not just that I find, well, it's kind of part and parcel that it's a great drum sound, but the fact that you can distinguish the toms and that sort of thing is huge. So you talking about the simplicity of the drum kit, but how important is perhaps the room that you record in? Because you're saying how dead of a room that it is. Have
In
you?
the old days, it used to be live room, live room, live room. And then I got to that point where I looked at the engineer and I said, why do my overheads sound like room mics? You know? So I went the other way. And what I did is I took the room, it's about a 20 by 20 room. That's thereabouts. And I theater draped it and in a couple panels. And you walk into it and you can hear it. It just drops. What that does is the stereo separation in the miking is just so much cleaner. I'm hitting the rack tom, and yes, it bleeds because it's a drum kit, but it's not bouncing all over the place in the overheads and the room mics. So we've come to a really, really cool setup of where you can add in the room mics. You can push in the overheads a little bit and not screw the whole mess up. There's also a little technique that his name is Kevin Majorino, is the engineer. He was out with, he does front of house for Jewel. And he's a cross between science and art. And if you saw my setup, you would see it where the overheads look kind of weird. They're like kind of off. And what he does is he measures from the snare drum, the middle of the snare drum, to make sure it's equal distance. So when I hit the snare, it shows up in a dead stereo field. Because the last thing you want is the snare over to the side a touch, and then your kick over to that side. But then your room mics are trying to show it as centered, and you get all kinds of, it's not as solid and tight. So when he came up with that thing, and the same with the room mics off the kick drum, everything is just solid. The kick and the snare are dead center. You got your toms panned where you want it, the two toms. And then the other thing that works really good with the dead room is your cymbals you can really hear the stereo spectrum of where they're supposed to be, especially things like the hi-hat, especially when you get to that kind of bashing the hi-hat, like when it's open, that has a tendency to fill everything. But when the room's dead, it's not. And it's very controllable. So no, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. It's not like, hey man, put a bunch of SM57s on the drum kit and let's roll.
Well, exactly. And I think that's what has really become a lost art now. And it's sad that it becomes kind of almost a treat sometimes to actually hear a drum kit being played,
Uh,
especially on
it,
a record. It's like, oh, right, that's what it sounds like. It's
and
just,
it's not the
it's
clickety,
kind of a
yeah, it's not,
shame. Yeah,
and it's not the clickety clickety kick drums that you always hear.
exactly.
Or or how about that 80s snare drum off the Whitesnake album that, you know,
It worked, but that was then. Yeah, but still.
no, but I'm saying everybody's using that now. They're using a
Exactly.
sample.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
other thing
yeah.
I think that you alluded to that it's a really big point is the player. And when I want to be dynamic, it'll show up that like when little things build up and when I bring them back, if you start sampling and triggering and all that, you're going to lose all that. You lose all the air. You lose all the dynamics.
Well, that's
And
these are fills that make sense that aren't overtaking from the song that have a point when required, and it can still be appreciative to say the prog rock, prog metal listener, but maybe somebody who's not quite have crossed over to that side, who prefers something maybe a bit more straight ahead, can still really appreciate it because the songs are still songs with strong melody and strong
yep.
playing. So it has all those elements that should appeal to both sides.
I think one of the other things too is yes, the vocals, melodies. We always insist on the big chorus. Some of the guitar lines and the leads are very melodic too, but there's some of these additional guitar lines that Simone put in there that are little melodies going on behind the verse or even musical parts or playing counter to what Nick's playing are hooks within themselves that create more hook and the more memory. I mean, you're singing that as well as you're singing the melody and it sticks in your head. You can never have enough melody. And I really think, a lot of, especially when you want to cross into quote metal, I think melody is like a forbidden word these days because there's no melodies going on.
No, no.
It's a lot of jigga 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 kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And how heavy can we get? And, you know, I don't know.
And it becomes way too
Not my idea.
and has no feel.
No, that too.
A2Z
Absolutely.
has feel. So talk a bit about Nick and Simone for people who don't know their backgrounds. Nick,
Well, Nick, I've known for about 30
Redemption.
years.
Yep.
He has his band, Nick Van Dyke, he has his band Redemption, and we've been like great friends. And like I always say, he's that guy that I'd leave my car keys, my checkbook, and my kids with. I mean, he's just a great guy. He's my friend. He'd always be there. I'd be there for him. Um, And what happened after the first record, everything was going great. The record comes out, and all of a sudden, a couple of the guys in the band get kind of squirrely. All of a sudden, they can't go out on tour. I got to play with my Rush tribute band for 9 months, but hey, we can go out 9 months from now. Um, Anyways, I wasn't going to be held hostage by a couple guys, so I decided to move on and replace them. I wrote with a lot of guys, and I was looking for different people. And Nick and I went to see Kansas, and he says to me, "Hey, he goes, we always talked about this. How about we start writing stuff?" I said, "Okay." So we start writing stuff, and it's all going good, and it's great, and it's cool. Not really thinking that it's A through Z. It's just really good, and I don't know, maybe we'll do something. I don't know, we'll see. I'm playing with Chris and Pelletieri at the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame that night, and I'm sitting backstage, and all these people are standing around, and Nick comes back, and he says, "Hey, man, I've been thinking, um, you put so much time, energy, and your money and your effort, and you just 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on, you got it to a certain point." He goes, "How about we just continue this with A through Z?" And I basically wanted to kiss him on the lips, even though I didn't. And it was just like brand new life. All of a sudden, we're back, we're back. So at that point in the game, though, I really decided that I learned a lesson. I really got to surround myself with guys that I love, guys that I trust, guys that trust me, guys that are communicative, and guys that are just very mature. I didn't think at my age I needed to learn those lessons, but you learn them every day. So it just kind of took off from there. We started writing, and then obviously Philip was playing the bass because of Mark's playing, Philip's playing. Um, Jimmy Waldo was my keyboard guy because I'd worked with Graham Bonnet, and he was playing in Warlord too, and just a pro. I'm looking for pros. I'm looking for pros that communicate. If someone came to me in the band and said, "Hey, Mark, your drumming sucks. I hate the way you run the band. Your eyes are cross-eyed. I just can't stand you." I could live with that. Cool. Okay, I get it. Goodbye. Thanks for coming. Cool. Okay, good. But this thing of like no communication and just days going by. Sorry, too old for that crap. If I wanted that crap, I'd have a couple more kids. But the Jimmy was the guy, total pro. And when Nick and I were putting it together, Nick said, "Hey, I know you mixed the first album with Simone," and that was like working. I've never worked with a guy remotely mixing an album. Like I could literally put my hand through the camera and I'd ask for something and I'd get it back tenfold. Just great. A pro, just pro. And that word gets tossed around, kind of lightly, but there's definitely a line of pro. So I knew Simone was a great guy, easy to work with, and all this kind of great stuff. We're on that same wavelength. And Nick goes, "Hey, how about we have Simone play all the leads because he's the greatest guitar player that I've ever seen, and he played with In Redemption with him." And so I talked to Simone about it. Oh, he was totally up for it. And then once he started with the leads, I said, "Hey, man, feel free to play all over the place. If you have ideas, melody lines, it's kind of that Gary Moore, Neil Sean, Steve Lukather, that when you're using the guitar kind of in the background, that's kind of subtle, but it really makes a big difference." And he went nuts, and here we are. It was kind of interesting because every guy I told him, "Do whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you what to do." I mean, even when it came to the vocals and lyrics, right, here's the song. I'm not going to tell you where I think the verse and chorus is. You figure it out, and that's the magic because he sang in spots that I wouldn't have technically thought was a singing part, but they were great. He didn't sing in other parts that we made great musical parts. So I just want to take the best out of each guy because you're talking about really seasoned pros that the three things that were really important was number one, they all bought into what we were doing. They knew it was all about the hook. They knew it was about the chorus. They knew it wasn't about the 12-minute song, and they knew it wasn't about their ego. And the other thing is that they trusted me. So when I said this or asked for this, and here's a good example that separates the first album from the second album. And yes, I'm only the drummer, but I'd hear ideas because I was listening to this thing 25 times a day. I've had to listen to this record at least 100 times. And the same with the first one when we were working on it. So there's always like thought, "Oh, why don't we try this? Can we try this?" And so the first time around, I would hear something like, "Hey, Ray singing, a certain line. How about we play the riff like this so it locks into it?" And if I would get 60 or 70% satisfaction in a result, I would live with it and be like, "Okay, whatever the reasoning is, you're not quite getting it, but I'll take it." This time around, when I would say to these guys, "Hey, how about we do this?" They would go, "Okay, Mark, that's really cute, but check this out." And they would take it up 4 levels. And I'd be like, "Damn." I go, "You're the guitar player, so you took my basic raw, know nothing, hey, just play the accents, and then you made it that much more." And I think that's what's the major difference between one of the major difference between the two records is that it was just everybody, there was so much, excuse the expression, love going on and passion for what we were doing and excitement for what was going on that it really shows. And you can see that in the video because that nothing is over video. All that background footage is just raw. I didn't even know that was going on for a while until it dawned on me there's a guy walking around with a camera. But yeah, no, it's a big love fest. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I'll put it this other way too, that I enjoyed the first album a lot, but with the second record right away too, is that I'm finding this, you guys aren't complacent. You're not just hanging around, you're all pushing each other. And Ray seems to be like pushing himself hard. And it's like, none of you have to, none of you have anything to prove, but I feel that you all are just truly creative and love music and need to test yourself and see maybe what your limits are or aren't and where you can go with things, because Ray's doing stuff I haven't heard him do before. And I'm loving on, I made a note on The Remedy, where I hear like his voice kind of cracking. And I'm like, that's awesome, because I feel that any other producer or something might say, oh, you need to do that again. And I'm like, no, no, that's what makes it cool, is that it's not perfect.
Exactly. Well, I was always a big fan of emotion. I was a sucker for like Coverdale with that breath. You'd always hear him take that breath, or another one that goes under the radar, especially depends on your age, is the first Montrose album with Sammy Hagar. The way that he ends those notes, and it was just so him and it was so feeling. Um, I would like to think, I mean, I know Ray's a total pro and he's going to give it 110% and all that kind of stuff. I would like to think that the music inspired him. I'd like to think that the music kicked his ass, that when he got it, he went, I'm rocking now, man. It's not like a lullaby or whatever. And it's like, I hear this and feel this. And, it comes out. It's funny. I never really thought about what you just said about like he's doing other things. Honestly, I don't sit around and listen to the old Fates Warning records. I don't sit around and listen to the Redemption record. I don't sit around and listen to all that to really go. I'm just going on what we're doing here. And it sounded great. But and you're not the only one to say that. A lot of people have said that it sounds like he's like not reborn, but like a couple cups of coffee kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like he's
And with that though, how much did Robbie have to contribute to that vocally?
he just comes in and him and Linda Chase and another buddy of mine, James Welch, which is an interesting story with Ray, and Ray, it's not that you can't sing all those parts, okay? But when you have the different voices, really, really quick story. I talked to Phil Ehart from Kansas. We're really good friends. He's helped me with the management of the band, blah, 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 blah. And when I starting this, I said, hey, who do you got who came runner up, to Ronnie Platt? Who's the runner up? I'm looking for a singer. And he turned me on to a few guys, and I talked to them. They're like, yeah, I sang on this Kansas album, and I sang on that Kansas album. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I go, wait a minute, that was Steve Walsh. What are you talking about? But I go to the record and I see the backing vocals. And then it dawns on me when I remember these videos of watching, like whether it's the Eagles or Tom Petty or somebody, they bring in the different voices. There's something about having four different voices, three different voices, not the same guy singing it over and over. And that was part of that whole big 80s background push that I always wanted from the beginning. I don't know a lot of bands today that are doing that. I know a lot of bands have a couple little vocal things, but I'm talking that wall of sound. Some of those Ray did. As I remember, the Remedy was Ray, basically. Breathe the Midnight Air and all that kind of stuff. That kind of thing. I think that was him. Some of the other ones are basically just taking, when Robbie's involved and the other people, they're just taking off what Ray already did. There are a couple things that Robbie's so creative that with his harmony choices, especially you hear that on Now I Walk Away. You really hear some of those vocal things.
That was one of my notes. Yeah, as far as one of the other standout tracks, they're all standout, but that was killer.
Mark my words. Mark my words. Tell me if I'm wrong. When you come out with singles, this isn't the 80s, so you can't come out with a power ballad. You got to come up tempo energy, kicking down the door. Even though The Remedy is the third single after the album is out, to me, Now I Walk Away will be this band's Silent Lucidity. If it is promoted right,
Yeah.
the video when we shot those videos, I made sure we shot that song at least once just to get film, and then we'll go from there. I think that it's the boy girl thing. You've already established yourself with all your up tempo. Okay, we know what the band is. The album's great, the artwork, everything's cool. That song is just sitting there waiting. Kind of reminds me of what We Only Say Goodbye could have been for Fates Warning if it ever got that light of day that it never did. They did the big remix and blah blah blah. It's that is to me is the this pinnacle of a 2025 power ballad. You got a whole prog Genesis kind of Phil Collinsy percussion thing that I'm playing. Ray sounds amazing. It's all hook oriented. It's all in the groove. You got the kind of distorted, tweaky drum fill, and then you're just into this complete power ballad.
It's a moment. No, good call. Good call.
Yeah, we couldn't release it as a single because I think a lot of times, especially this day and age, the singles they're not like MTV singles. Okay, if this was back in the day, it might have been different.
True, but I find, especially in the hard rock metal world, sometimes, especially on the melodic side of things, that there's often that other track, the other track on the album that becomes this thing that was
Yep,
never a single, becomes a staple track in a band set. Just how
yep.
does that happen? And perhaps this is kind of one of those sleeper tracks that people are like, hey, what about this?
Well, it's like, look back, and I know we're going back some years, but look at Night Ranger, like it's Rockin' America or whatever it was, but it was Sister Christian
Hmm.
that it's the power ballad because it relates to everybody. Hard rocking tunes don't relate to women usually. They don't, girls, women, gals, whatever we call them this day. Doesn't rely to the female set as much as a ballad. I mean, how do you think those bands like Warrant and Poison, they killed with those ballads. So, and even Silent Lucidity, that's what really kicked that off.
Oh, truly, yeah. Yeah.
So I mark my words, that song, every time I hear it, I'm just like, damn, too bad this wasn't the 80s. We'd be like Nick goes, he goes, man, if this was the 80s, we'd be in a private jet right now, you know? But yeah, that's the song that I'm kind of banking on. Like, okay, we're gonna get the 3 singles out, start working the record. We're putting the live thing together. We're pushing on that as hard as we can. Oh, absolutely. That's 70% of the
That's
game.
okay. There we go. Okay. That's
Oh,
what
70%. Oh, absolutely. This is not a band. This is not a project. This is a band. I think that's the ugliest word in the music industry is a project. It's not a project, it's a band. It was always meant to be a band. Sometimes you have to change members in a band. Sometimes in a company people get fired. I mean, it happens. Um, so no, we definitely know that the live thing it's just very difficult today. And we're not sitting back on, well, we have to have this and we have to have that. It's just the opportunities, the label's pushing on it. We have different agents looking at it. I do truly think though that the singles are cute and they're cool and they're good, but this is a band that's built on an album. This will be an album. People aren't going to go, wow, the singles are great. The rest of it's crap. This is like, oh, this is I envision the classic. Everybody's got kind of a different favorite song because it's going to resonate with you differently. And they're all kind of sitting in their own, position to where that it was designed to be 10 singles, basically.
Well, you're
Yeah.
completely right because I believe I'm about my fourth or fifth run through it, and each time it's like, oh, but that one, and then oh yeah, but that one, and it's like, oh, that was cool the first time. This chaotic symphony that ripped
Yep.
apart as well. I'm like, oh, I just love the vibes, and again, just smart playing once again. It's like there we go. So the smart playing leads into I'm also wondering, might there be this is just me being me. Might there be a special edition with the Mark Zonder isolated drums as the bonus disc where we can just listen to the sound of your kid just solo on its own? I'm just
I
being
mean, that could be done in about 25 minutes. I just call
okay.
Simone, but I do have 4 playthroughs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, which are great. I really enjoy those.
and the drums are up loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, I that could be done in 2 seconds. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what a demand for that would be.
Yeah.
Um,
There'll be 10 of us. They'll be like losing our
yeah,
mind.
I know. Because I did notice, and not to be funny, but I did notice it's not like people are, banging down the doors to watch me play a playthrough. Okay. I mean, it might be different if you're the lead guitar player or, the guitar player or, the other thing too is I've noticed a lot of times, I think people do playthroughs where they only do like 25 seconds.
Yeah.
They don't do the whole song. I'm thinking, hell, man, I got to learn these for the tour. Let's do the whole song. I'll record them while I'm playing. Simone sends me the mix minus the drums. I purposely play different fills so people don't accuse me of just playing to the track. And away it goes.
So regarding shows though, do you think there's a chance of an actual tour or perhaps maybe just some festival dates, maybe something like a Prague Power, maybe some Euro summer festivals, that kind of thing, or maybe jumping on a tour?
Well, the ideal thing, and we've talked about this, you have to remember this day and age, and any musician will tell you, and even Ray is sitting there at a dinner with me going, man, they don't even do this for Fates Warning. The label's invested. Okay. The label stepped up. They brought 6 guys from around the world to LA for 5 days to do videos, photo shoot, press, whatever. They don't do that if they're not invested. They believe me, trust me. Like Ray said to me when we're going out to dinner with the label, and he goes, we both go, man, this is like the 90s all over again. Um, they're invested and they know we have to go out and play live. It's ridiculously expensive. The offers aren't flooding in. I think the album has to come out maybe when I think we might be one of those bands since we don't have a catalog. This isn't like our 7th record and they know that we've done this before. I'm just kind of thinking that the album needs to come out and cause some waves, cause a little, it's going to cause some stir, I think, just because of the consistency of the songs. I don't know what someone can listen to that record and say, it's good, but I don't like the snare sound. The toms sound like crap. The vocals are buried. I don't know what they can say. Like you said, it's chock full of hits and stuff like that. The ideal situation is an opening act for someone who's playing in a bigger place and a little bit of a different audience. And don't take this personally, but you would have had the best interview of any interview if you would have got on the Zoom with me today and said, hey, I don't know who you are, but I love your band. We need to get in front. I mean, a
Yeah,
lot
no,
about
true,
me
true.
and my career.
Yeah, true, true.
We need to get in front of an audience where they don't know who the hell we are. But man, I love that record. That's the only way that we're going to get kind of up and out of that underground cult, whatever you want to call it, thing. And no, there is no quote progressive rock market. Okay. You take Dream Theater out of the equation, who's left? Who's out there that you go, they're banging down the doors, they're selling a lot and they're packing the places. They've made their own cottage industry. Okay. We need to be up and out. And with this record, I think we can play anything from you could play with Styx to Kansas to Whitesnake to Tesla. You're not going to play with Slayer, but you can play with, you could play with Priest because it's song oriented. We even talked about, Hammerfall, and Joachim's a good friend of mine. And you go, well, wait a minute, that's a little different. It's Euro power metal. I go, yeah, but the audience is all about the song. They're all about that hook in the chorus, the chant along thing. So they could relate to A through Z songs that have memorable choruses,
Maybe
so
accept or something, maybe.
pardon me,
Maybe accept or something, just thinking out loud.
anybody, we're game for anybody. We've already talked about it and the label agrees 100%. We're not sitting back waiting for the ideal tour. I mean, Queensrÿche would have been a good one. Again, though, you have to ask yourself, is there really anybody in that audience that's not familiar with Fates Warning and all that kind of thing? I mean, how much are you really expanding your audience? It would be great. I'd take it in a heartbeat. But I think if you got, I know it's a far fetch, but a bigger band in a different genre, let's say Journey, let's say Tesla. Tesla's not playing gazillion, they're not Def Leppard, okay? They're not playing the Megadomes, but something where it's different and they don't really know who you are. But as Joe Perry would say, let the music do the talking.
Maybe
And
Scorpions, maybe
that, yeah, that would work. Yeah,
just a bit.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Because there you are. There's a band that's singing choruses, in ballads. Oh no, Scorpions would be amazing. Oh, MSG too. Anything. Anything along that line. Because I don't think that line has the amount of people that know Mark and Ray and that kind of thing from the Fates Warning thing.
well, but I think you fully nailed it on the head. Is that you either need people that you're talking to promote the band and get awareness of the band that know nothing about the background, and or if it is people like myself that do know the background. I think what you said earlier was extremely important that people know is that there's so many projects in the metal and prog world that a lot of people may just go, well, this is cool, but it's another project. So you really establishing that this is a band. I
Oh
think,
yeah.
oh, this is a band. Okay, this is cool because you have a pretty big back catalog where you've done a lot of other side things. So it's not really at a person's or a fan's fault to think that, oh, this is just another cool thing that he's put out. But it's like, no, this is a band that wants to tour.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
think that's shown though the fact that I went from one to the next. and didn't just fold it in after, I had personnel problems. It was like, this is continuing. And usually projects don't do that. Projects are like, okay, it was these guys, it was fun, it was cute, and now we're done because this guy and that guy, are out. So we're done. The project's over with. The band's not over with. It reminds me of kind of like a franchise. As long as, Ray and myself, you would think, are going, and as long as the music is up to snuff, we're fine, you
Mhm.
know. But I have surrounded myself with guys that I love, guys that I trust, guys that are mature, guys that are just buy in. They understand the dynamics of a band. No, your girlfriend's not shooting the album cover. No, the bass player's not writing lyrics because you want credit too. They all got it, and I think that really shows.
You don't need headaches. You don't need to be babysitting.
Oh gosh, no,
That's all.
no, no,
Now back to
no. Like,
about how Metal Blade is really investing into this record, and I think another thing that shows is the multiple formats of the album coming out. That I think I've seen three different variations of the vinyl, and then there's the CD release. I think that also shows how committed they are to backing this. And as far as that goes, I'm letting people know quickly, you can pre-order A through Z on differentstagesradio.com, and I'm sure you can get it through Metal Blade, but where are other smart places to pre-order A through Z product?
well, here's the real truth, and everybody, I've been asked a million times, well, we want to buy so the band benefits but best. Well, we're not selling albums out of the back of our car. And the fact that Metal Blade has invested so much time, energy, and money way above what is norm, that's where you need to buy it at. You need to show them that you kind of appreciate high-end videos, the other thing too is when you buy from Metal Blade, it's none of this Amazon, oh, it'll be 8 weeks and maybe it'll show up and maybe it won't, and oh, out of stock. You don't have to deal with that crap. I mean, I love Amazon like the next guy, and I'll get my toilet paper or whatever delivered tomorrow, and that's great. Dish soap or pads for the dog. Okay, great. Go through the label. They, especially on this one, they've invested, they've went out of their way. They put up with my phone calls, my emails, and we're working together, and I'm pushing and they're pushing. And no, you go for the label, and they've just been absolutely great. Like I said, we're sitting there at dinner, and Ray's like, man, they don't even do this for Fate's Warning, so they're invested, they're definitely invested, and again, we all realize a great album is one thing, but it has to go further than that.
Excellent. Now you're also invested into Warlord. You got some Warlord stuff going on, a couple of things. You got
Yeah.
some shows happening in
Yeah.
late June, correct? And then you have Japan later on in the year.
Well, actually, we're in Japan in March. We played a couple shows.
In March, okay.
We played a couple shows there, and then at the end of June, we're going to Germany, and then the big thing is we're opening up for Priest in Italy, and then we play a couple shows in Holland and whatchamacallit, Holland, Belgium, and another one in Germany. So, we're playing some shows. We're playing the 17 classics. It's not like Warlord ever beat to death any territories. No one can ever accuse the band of like overplaying South America or something like that. So just kind of taking it as it comes. It hasn't quite moved like I thought it might have hopefully moved, but the guys in the band are great. Love hanging out with those guys. They play it note for note, which is important. If you've seen any of the videos, it's never been this tight. You know what I mean? It really hasn't. It's never been this tight. And we have a good time, and we go knock it out and we play. And yeah, I'm having a good time with that. I mean, I'm relearning, I'm not relearning. Well, I'm relearning the songs, I guess you could say, but I just need to play them once or twice. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, okay, okay. Kind of comes right back. So I'll be ready, and we'll go do it and see what happens.
You're always ready. Now, these metal signs I saw that you had printed up for Deliver Us, the metal prints, do you still have any of those? And if
Oh
so,
yeah.
how do people get those? Let's sell some,
What's that?
let's sell some stuff.
Yeah, no, it's all, if you go to my Facebook page or the Warlord Facebook pages and stuff like that, it's all there. They're all posts going up. I will be taking some of those with me when we go. So, because it is a lot easier to sell merch at a gig than it is. Because, especially, I'll be honest with you, man, those plaques, when you send them overseas, they cost 35 bucks for postage,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous to be paying 35 bucks on a $50 item. It just, from where I come from, I can't do that. In the States, it's cool because you go meaty and it's $4.95 and you're done. But So I'll be bringing him with me. So if people, in those countries and at those gigs, come on out and we'll have them there and I'll sign them and all that kind of great stuff.
We'll appreciate that. Now, I wanted to ask though, of course, everybody needs to get both A through Z albums, especially the new one. And for those who also have the Warlord albums, who have you on the mini Fates Warning records, what are maybe a couple other things in the Mark Zonder catalog that maybe flew under the radar that maybe
Ah,
you think
good question.
somebody's, it's like you guys should really check this out. I think this is really cool that maybe people missed the boat on.
These are all going to be more song-oriented hard rock. I'll be honest with you, the best stuff that I've ever done proggy is with whether it's A through Z or Fates Warning. I'm not getting projects from guys that are going to top that. Or if they did, I'd be in their band. I'm just kidding. There was a few things come to mind. Obviously, the Chroma Key with Kevin Moore. Okay.
So good.
There might be 8 songs on the record. I played on 5. 3 of them are like sound effects and noises, and then Kevin going off into a whole different whatever he's doing. But those 5 songs, I thought were amazing. Almost certain ones have like this almost Steely Dan kind of feel to them, and I got to just play and not necessarily be heavy, but be more artsy, I guess you could say. Really groove oriented, really linear sticking heavy. That's a really good one. I did, I think it was called Storm Warning, or I think it's Storm Warning by the band 10 with Gary Hughes. I did it a long time ago. Really like working with those guys. Commercial hard rock, White Snake, whatever you want to call it. Really good vocals, really good songs. I just really love playing in that pocket and really bringing it all together. Another one that went under the radar that's in the similar vein is Richard West from Threshold, League of Lights, the very first album, with his wife singing, kind of poppy, really good. But I have to say the one that went under the radar that I thought was just absolutely great, and maybe it suffered from not having a big name lead singer, was the album that I did with Gary Werkamp from Shadow Gallery. I thought the songs were amazing. I thought the drums sounded amazing. He did an amazing job mixing it. Very not They weren't quirky. It's almost a little Toy Matinee. I don't know if you're familiar with that band or not, but a little off center. It wasn't progressive. It's definitely song oriented, but between the lyrics and the melody lines, a little storytelling kind of stuff. I just thought it was great. No label wanted it. We quote self-produced it or whatever because we thought it was that good. And it just kind of did what it did, and that was it. But that was one of the ones that was kind of a disappointment that I remember listening to that over and over going, wow, these drums sound so good. I mean, just the drums just sound so good. Very not airy, but very kind of open. Wasn't, up tempo and all that kind of stuff, but just really, really good. Really kind of more intellectual, I guess you could say, from the lyric and melody department. But what else we got? Um, I don't know. I'm sure
At
there's
War
a
with
million.
Self. That's a good one too.
Who?
At War with Self.
Yeah, that was a long, long time ago. A long, long time with Glenn. That was one of those ones that didn't, to me, that was, the whole proggy thing. And I know it's going to come to a shock to a lot of people. I'm not a real big prog guy. I'm a song guy. I'm a 2 and 4 guy that likes to take it and get inventive with it. And even with the Fates Warning stuff, as much as some of it might have been an odd time, I thought I did a really good job at making it groove and that people could catch things. You take 2 bars of 5 and now you got 10, and then you can go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 with this, I mean, you can make it so people can feel it. There's a lot of prog music that I can't even feel, and I have no idea of what's going on, and I've never been a fan of that. So at War with Self, that was an interesting one. That wasn't I don't want to say the easiest one to roll out. Glenn was a great guy, but it was, I, not, I know it's been 30 years, probably. It's been a long time. The other one, whether it was Speaking to Stones, is that what it was called? Um,
That one's
Tony, was it Tony? A guitar player. Speaking to Stones, I think is what it was. Andrews, what's that guy's name? Andrews Anger or something like that, the singer. Again, that you're talking a lot
Yeah,
of years ago,
yeah,
and you're talking a lot of. I mean, I've done hundreds of different bands stuff. Some that you've heard of, some that you haven't heard of.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's been good. I can't complain.
But it's awesome to hear how you now you just sort of brought it all full circle about talking about how you more appreciate just a more straight ahead song, which is the case. I don't want to say like so straight ahead, but with A through Z, this seems to be ideally probably where your heart is at as far as musically. Is that
Yeah, you could say that it's a kind of a combination of you get to play a little, you get to show your thing, and the thing I think that I did really well on this album and the previous one is as much as the groove is just the groove, I do it in a way that makes it a little bit more creative. You add the toms, and especially like a song like Trial by Fire that had the whole running pattern with the toms and the bell on the cymbal. But I did it in Fate's Warning all the time too. It's complicated, but it loops so everybody gets it. It's like it's not changing. The worst is when it changes every 3 bars, every 2 bars, every 4 bars, and like no one can follow it. As long as it's crazy but repetitive, and you can tap your foot to it, you can catch it and then start picking it apart. But this band is all about the chorus. It's all about the hook. And again, I looked at it as 10 songs that could be singles.
exactly while still having the musicality for the geeks out there?
Absolutely. Oh no, I think we definitely filled that void, you know.
You totally did. And I so am looking forward to having the physical product in my hand on June the 6th on Metal Blade Records. A through Z, A through Z2 coming out on June the 6th on Metal Blade Records. Once again, support the label directly. They made a major investment into the band. And as Mark said, show them that you're supporting the record by supporting the label. And you can also pre-order it as well through differentstagesradio.com. Once again, Mark Zonder, A through Z. Have fun this summer, and hopefully we see A through Z on tour maybe a couple days later in 2025.
Absolutely. We're trying, trust me, we're pushing. It's an everyday occurrence.
Well, thank you very much. And once again, this is Different Stages Radio.